Students, today topic is about the drugs affecting coagulation, bleeding and thrombosis. Myself Dr. Ghulam Ahmad Lone, Associate Professor Pharmacology, Dr. ARK GMCH Hamirpur. As you know, drugs affecting coagulation, bleeding and thrombosis is a multi-pronged lecture. In our body, the blood, if it coagulates, it is an abnormality. If it bleeds, it is also abnormality. So it should be in a state of fluid. Its function is to transport the oxygen from one part of the body to another part. Transport the metabolic activities, anabolic activities, and this all is due to the blood. Now, as you know, in the overview, there is an introduction, there is a coagulation cascade, there is a, natural anticoagulants, then initially it is coagulants, then we have anticoagulants, then newer anticoagulants, then fibrinolytics and antiplatelets. So this lecture is not only one lecture, but it contains a lot of lectures by itself. Now, as you know, introduction, hemostasis is the cessation of blood loss from a damaged vessel. So when we have a vascular spasm, wound causes vasoconstriction, which prevents blood loss. So when there is a vascular spasm. When there is a platelet plug formation, it starts with platelet adhesion to the exposed collagen of the damaged endothelium. And then there is a blood coagulation. It is followed by platelet aggregation by losing their individual membrane and forming a gelatinous mass platelet plug, loose initially but tightens when reinforced by fibrin. So when it is a meshwork of the fibrin, this platelet plug is reinforced by fibrin. This you have to remember. Now, thrombosis is a pathological condition resulting from inappropriate activation of the hemostatic mechanism. Venous thrombosis is usually associated with the stasis of blood. A venous thrombus has a small platelet component and a large component of the fibrin. Then we have arterial thrombosis is usually associated with atherosclerosis, and the thrombus has a large platelet component. So here we have a large platelet component, and in the venous we have a large component of fibrin. So this makes the difference between the venous thrombosis and arterial thrombosis. A portion of the thrombus may break away, travel as an embolus, and lodge downstream, causing ischemia and or infarction. So this thrombus is formed, it will break down, and this embolus then goes down the stream and causing ischemia and or infarction. So this is also one of the attributes that you have to make the difference between venous thrombosis and arterial thrombosis. Now, you have gone through this about the factor and name. There are, almost 12 factors. Number 1 factor is fibrinogen. Number 2 factor is prothrombin. It is in Roman, number. Number 3rd factor is tissue factor or thromboplastin. Number 4th is calcium. Number 5th is proacceleratin, a labile factor. Number 7, there is no 6, but 7 is proconvertin stable factor. Number 8 is anti-hemophilic factor A or anti-hemophilic globulin. And then we have number 9 factor, it is plasma thromboplastin component that we call as the Christmas factor. Number 10 is power factor, and also plasma thromboplastin antecedent. Then number 11th is hemophilia C, Rosenthal syndrome. Number 12 is Hageman factor. And number 13th, we have fibrin establishing Leakey-Laurent factor. So these are different names. You don't mind it. And you have already gone through this in the first year, that envisages your, pronunciation and your, this terminology. That is very important. Now coagulation cascade. This is very important, coagulation cascade. This coagulation cascade is this coagulation cascade is, there are two factors. One is the extrinsic factor, another is the intrinsic factor. Extrinsic factor and intrinsic factor. So when the tissue is damaged, it is tissue factor, this is 12A phospholipase calcium. Then this factor 10 goes towards 10A. It is already then, this is the factor 9, and there is a factor, 9A comes into being. Then this comes to the, 9A, it is activating factor, and then IXA we call it, and then is factor 8A and phospholipase. There is a calcium sequestration. Then this number 10 to 10A, then this 10A becomes low molecular weight rivaroxaban. This is the drug. It comes to the calcium. It inhibits that XA, and then prothrombin goes to the thrombin. It is prothrombinase. This is an enzyme, and this is the drug which provides this, which is dabigatran. It is a herodinase. So what are the different, drugs where they act, where the heparin acts, where the, low molecular weight, heparins act, and where the herodinase act, and this is all depending upon your how much hold you have in the extrinsic pathway and the intrinsic pathway. That you will come to know, and the platelets is very important in the coagulation, and this is thrombin, and this is it takes the part, and then where there is a plus plus, it takes the part. Where is the minus minus, it inhibits the reaction. So this is the ultimate is thrombin to fibrinogen to fibrin by thrombin action, and fibrin to stabilize the fibrin. It is through this this pathway X triple one means 13, this activated factor. So activated factors, you have understood, it becomes the source of a reaction where it provides the activation, right? That's why you call the A. So AA. So this extrinsic intrinsic pathway, once you will come to know the different drugs, how they affect and what is their contribution in activating this, in inhibiting this, and then we maintain the fluidity. Or if there is a fibrin formation, that fibrin formation is, there is a lysis of the fibrin, because that we call as the fibrinolysis. So when the thrombus is formed, that thrombus and should be disintegrated into the, it should be dissolved. That is fibrinolysis. So once the fibrin should not be formed, and then fibrin should not be formed, we give many drugs like anticoagulants. So we give the aspirin in small dose in the cardiac ailments to make the blood thinner. And this is the applicability between the extrinsic and intrinsic pathway. This is where the drug acts, and it is not that much complicated, which is shown over here, but it becomes clear once you do the now this is the fibrinolytic system. This system provides check and balance so that clotting process does not go out of hands. So fibrinolytic system, it dissolves clots at the site of the damage once the damage is repaired. So the process of dissolution of the clot is called the fibrinolysis. So once the clot is formed, then it should be disintegrated and it should be dissolved. This is called the fibrinolysis. And then this is the endothelium. From the endothelium, this plasminogen inhibitors 1, plasminogen emitters 2, and then we have a TPA thrombin plasminogen to plasmin. So this is also thrombin. Then the meshwork is fibrinogen, fibrinogen to fibrin. So this meshwork is fibrin degradation products are there because the one is thrombus is formed. So these inhibitors play a role in the normal phenomena, but this plasminogen to plasmin, they are taking this fibrin degradation takes place, and we have to have the alpha 2AP. So this plasminogen is disintegrated by these receptors, by these drugs where they are acting, and smooth muscle cells and macrophages play a role in maintaining the hemostasis. Now, natural anticoagulants, anticoagulants mechanisms, we have prostacyclin that we call the PGI2, that we have already gone through, the prostaglandin, and a metabolite of the arachidonic acid produced by endothelial cells. It opposes the action of the TXA2. So I have already talked about this. PGI2 is a dilator, TXA2 is a constrictor, and PGI2 is found in the endothelium and TXA2 in the in the platelets. So TXA2 is constrictor, PGI2 is the inhibitor, is the natural anticoagulant mechanism what is found in the body. And antithrombin third, a plasma protein, it blocks the action of the factor 7, factor 7, factor 9, factor this is 7, this is 6, this is 9, this is 10 and 2. 2, 5, 6, 7 and 10. Isn't these are the factors, these blocked by the antithrombin third, and this 83 antithrombin third is the plasma protein. So this blocks the action. So this is the heparin, that is the main crux that is being inhibited. And then this prostacyclin and this TXA2 you have to remember forever. Now protein C, protein C, it is a plasma protein. Inactivates factor 8 and factor 8 and 5, not blocked by antithrombin third. It enhances the activity of TPA. So once this TPA is there, it enhances potentiates the effect of the TPA. So it is a vitamin K endogenous anticoagulant, which is activated by the thrombin through binding to its receptor thrombomodulin. It modulates the action. Heparan sulfate is a proteoglycan related to heparin, synthesized by endothelial cells, serves as a cofactor. Enhance the activity of the antithrombin third. So this heparan sulfate, it enhances the activity of antithrombin third. So this is very important to. Now coagulants. What are the coagulants? Coagulants are also in the body. These are the substances, or vitro also. These are the substances which promote coagulation and are indicated in hemorrhagic state. If a person bleeds too much, when it bleeds, there is a circulation collapse. There is a collapse. But our main aim should be that we will get the fresh whole blood or plasma, provide all the factors needed for coagulation, and are the best therapy for deficiency of any clotting factor. Also they act immediately. So once a person bleeds in the operation theater or in the accident, our main aim is that we will have a fresh whole blood that provides immediate action, and that clotting deficiency is there, that is provided by this whole blood. And then we have classification of coagulants. Is the vitamin K, and there is the miscellaneous. So what is the vitamin K? There is a K1 from plants, fat soluble. It is also called the phytonadione and phylloquinone. K2 is the menaquinone. K3 is synthetic. A fat soluble, menadione, acetaminophthalate, and water soluble is menadione, sodium bisulfate, menadione, sodium diphosphate. And then on the right hand side there is a miscellaneous plasma fraction, and it is factor 8, factor 9 are mixed factors. Then we have antifibrinolytics, that's called the aminocaproic acid, tranexamic acid, aprotinin, fibrinogen, that's called a human anti-hemophilic factor. Then there is a desmopressin. Then adrenochrome, monosemicarbazone, and rutin, and ethamsilate. So these are the miscellaneous drugs, and this is the vitamin K. This is the classification of the, I mean to say, those drugs which are coagulants. And then after that, vitamin K. So vitamin K, vitamin K is very important. It is a fat-soluble dietary, I mean to say, principle required for the synthesis of the clotting factor 2, prothrombin, 7, 9, and 10. So vitamin K is a fat-soluble vitamin found in the green leafy vegetables such as cabbage, spinach, and liver, cheese, etc. So you have to remember where there is a supplementation of the vitamin K to vegetables and all that. Then we have a vitamin K and its analogs. Natural vitamin K or phytonadione obtained from the leafy vegetables can be given orally or by IV injection also. Rapid onset is there, and it has a prolonged effect, requires bile salts for absorption. So it is enhanced by the bile salts. And then deficiency can occur in obstructive jaundice and any disease involving malabsorption of fats. Then vitamin K2 or menaquinone synthesized by the intestinal flora. Hence prolonged inhibition of the growth of the intestinal bacteria from antibiotic therapy can lead to deficiency of the vitamin K. So when we give a lot of antibiotics, vitamin K deficiency is produced because there is a growth of the intestinal bacteria. So those drugs which have got this effect, anticoagulant effect, we have to not to give those drugs which are making inhibition of the growth of intestinal bacteria. So vitamin K3 or mendaquione, synthetic water soluble analog is this. Its bile salts are not needed for absorption, can be given orally in case of obstructive jaundice. So this is the mechanism of action. You see, then we have vitamin K quinone is the vitamin K reduced form, hydroquinone is the reduced form, this is epoxide form, vitamin K oxidized form. So then oxygen, carbon dioxide, glutamic acid residues are in vitamin this factor 2, 7, 9, and 10, and carboxyglutamic acid residues in factor 2, factor 7, factor 9, and factor 10. So this once it is oxidation reduction, vitamin K quinone is taking place, then this vitamin K reductase is there, and vitamin K reductase 1, and this is supplemental, and the warfarin is that drug where they effect on these reductases. So this is where the oral anticoagulant, this is the normal phenomena, and the mechanism of action, the warfarin is taking place at this epoxide. So this will go through, you will go through it in the oral anticoagulants. Now indications, dietary deficiency of vitamin K is very rare in adults. However, when it occurs 5 to 10 milligram per day, oral or parenteral vitamin K rapidly corrects the defects. So in adults there is no deficiency, but in young people, in young neonates, there is a deficiency of vitamin K. So prolonged administration, antimicrobial therapy, we use a supplementation and treat in the same way as dietary deficiency of the vitamin K. So this prolonged administration therapy, once in immunocompromised patients or those patients which have to give 5 to 10 days antimicrobial therapy, this vitamin K is replenished, or we have to supplement the vitamin K. Then we have obstructive jaundice or malabsorption syndrome. There is a supraregional ileitis, steatorrhea, etc. Vitamin K 10 milligram intramuscular per day or orally along with the bile salts we have to give, because the bile salts will, make enhancement of the absorption. Now we have to have this liver disease, cirrhosis, and viral hepatitis. There is a deficiency, and at the same time, newborns. All newborns have low levels of the prothrombin and other clotting factors. The cause is both lower capacity to synthesize clotting factors as well as deficiency of the vitamin K. The defect is exaggerated in the premature infants. Vitamin K1, vitamin K 1 milligram intramuscular VU soon after birth has been recommended routinely because vitamin K is very less, I would say, in the neonates, and we have to supplement it at that moment of time. Some prefer administration 5 to 10 milligram intramuscular to the mother 4 to 12 hours before delivery. So they give the supplement to the mother. This supplementation goes through the, I would say, to the neonat, and at that time we give the prior to delivery 5 to 10 milligrams. It is 4 to 12 hours before. So hemorrhagic disease of the newborn can be effectively prevented and treated. So we can treat at the earlier the better. Now overdose of the oral anticoagulants. So phytonadione K1 is the preparation of the choice because it acts most rapidly. Dose depends on the severity of the hypoprothrombinemia. It is measured by the INR and bleeding, if there is a bleeding. Severe 10 milligrams intramuscular followed by 5 milligrams 4 hourly we give. Bleeding generally stops in 6 to 12 hours. But normal levels of the coagulation factors are restored only after 24 hours. This dose of vitamin K will block anticoagulant activity for 7 to 10 days. So moderate. Then 10 milligram intramuscular followed by 5 milligram once or twice according to response. So mild, just omit a new few doses of the anticoagulant. So we have a severe, we have a moderate, we have a mild. Once we have to, there is an overdose of the oral anticoagulants. So prolonged high dose salicylate therapy causes hypoprothrombinemia. So salicylate also causes the hypoprothrombinemia. At that time, vitamin K should be given prophylactically. If bleeding occurs, treat as for oral anticoagulants. So adverse effects. Phytonadione injected intramuscularly or given orally hardly produce any adverse effects. Allergic reactions are rare. Anaphylactic reactions, we have hemolysis in G6PD deficiency patient. If there is a G6PD deficiency, there is a hemolysis. In the newborn, menadione or its salts can be precipitate carinecticus, so they can precipitate the bilirubin. So hyperbilirubinemia occurs. By inducing hemolysis and increasing bilirubin load, by competitively inhibiting glucuronidation of the bilirubin, glucuronidation conjugation is as such inadequate in neonates. So that you know, I have already talked to you about the glucuronidation. So the drugs which are being metabolized through the glucuronide should not be given to the neonates. And this glucuronidation process comes after 1 to 2 weeks, after 1 to 2 months. So till that time, there is a more carinectus and there is a more, I would say, bilirubin in the neonat. So we should not give the glucuronide conjugate as such. It is inadequately present in the neonates. Now, another is desmopressin. It releases factor 8 and von Willebrand factor from vascular endothelium. So factor 8 and von Willebrand factor is present in the vascular endothelium and chucks bleeding in hemophilia. So this chucks the hemophilia and von Willebrand factor disease. So when there is a von Willebrand factor, it is a genetic, it is not present, it is a hemophilia. So desmopressin is given. Desmopressin, you should remember it. Actually, it is a V2. It is the diuretic, anti-ADH, antidiuretic, I would say, which makes the water, I would say, in our body, I would say, equilibrium. So this is desmopressin. Actually, another is the fibrinogen. The fibrinogen fraction of the human plasma is employed to control bleeding in hemophilia. Anti-hemophilic globulin, that we call the AHG, anti-hemophilic hemophilic globulin deficiency and acute fibrinogenomic status. So fibrinogen is to be given in these it is anti-hemophilic globulin, and it is deficiency and acute fibrinogenomic state we call it. Now, anti-hemophilic factor, it is concentrated human AHG prepared from pooled human plasma. It is indicated along with the human fibrinogen in hemophilia and AHG deficiency. So it is highly effective in controlling bleeding episodes, but action is short lasting. It takes 1 to 2 days. Adrenochrome monosemicarbazole, it is also anticoagulant. It is believed to reduce capillary fragility, control oozing from raw surfaces, and prevent microvessel bleeding, that is epistaxis, nose bleeding we call it, hematuria, when there is a urine through blood is coming, that's hematuria. Secondary hemorrhage from wounds, that's how we use the adrenochrome monosemicarbazole at that time. Now another agent is ethamsilate. It reduces capillary bleeding when platelets are adequate, probably exerts anti-hyaluronidase action or corrects abnormalities of the platelet adhesion, and then but does not stabilize fibrin, not an anti-fibrinolytic. Ethamsilate has been used in the prevention and treatment of capillary bleeding in menorrhagia after abortion we have to give. So, or PPH, postpartum, epistaxis, melena, hematuria, and often tooth extraction, we give ethamsilate. Side effects are nausea, rash, headache, and fall in blood pressure.